I want to make this video to address a problem that I think that we have commonly associated with young earth creationism. Now, I am a young earth creationist. I think that the world as we know it was created in 6 days and God rested on the seventh day, literal days. And I think that the universe is young, that it's not billions of years old, and I completely reject the idea of macroevolution, things evolving from less advanced life forms into higher life forms. I think that's irrational and unscientific. But I do want to say that I think there's one area where we young earth creationists often go too far. And I see this all over the place, and I myself used to say this until I read some other things. And this is the issue. Saying that there was no animal death before the fall. That, as Romans 5:12 says, let me read it, therefore just as sin came into the world through one man, and death through sin, and so death spread to all men because all sinned. Okay, so the Bible's saying here that sin came into the world through Adam, okay, and then everyone sins, but death also is now, everyone's going to die because Adam sinned. So that is what it says there. It says death spread to all men. But does this verse also mean that there was no animal death before the fall? And that's what young earth creationists usually would say, is there was no animal death before the fall, because that would show that there's corruption, there's suffering. This is not the way that God designed it. Further evidence that they usually say is, this is a cool verse here, right in Genesis 1, verses 29 and 30, it says, therefore God said, behold, I have given you every green plant yielding seed that is on the face of the earth, and every tree with seed in its fruit. You shall have them for food. That's God speaking to the people. But then verse 30, and to every beast of the earth, and to every bird of the heavens, and to everything that creeps on the earth, everything that has the breath of life, I have given every green plant for food. And it was so. And God saw that everything he had made, and behold, it was very good. Okay, so from this they take, and then we say, clearly God gave the people plants to eat, and God gave the animals green things to eat as well. So they didn't eat each other. And that seems pretty good to me. The problem is when you start thinking about how biology actually works. Think of the animal kingdom, think of the food chain, and then think of all how the animals all eat each other and how they're interdependent on each other. When you consider how was the world supposed to go on for any length of time if none of the animals ate each other, then I see a real problem here. First, you got to ask, was it possible for any animal to die? On this view, if you take this, that there was no animal death before the fall, it was impossible. Animals didn't die. None of them ate each other. So each animal would stick around indefinitely. So this means that the elephants are eternal. They're going to have baby elephants, and we're just going to have more and more and more elephants. But the same thing with the ants. And so each ant is now eternal, and he's just going to have baby ants, and then we're going to have billions and trillions and gazillions of ants, and none of the ants are ever going to die. None of the ants are ever going to get eaten by the anteaters, because anteaters don't, they're probably not there, or they don't eat ants at this point, right? So I see a problem here with overpopulation. How is this God's design? We'd run out of space in no time if every single animal was going to continue to live forever, okay? So that's one issue I see there too. But then think about this. What about all the animals? Like, the question I have is, what did a great white shark eat before the fall, right? Like, did God not make those sharks? Think of the cat species, how cats, they eat meat, right? Like, think of all the meat eaters that we have. What did these things eat? Like, you look at the design of a great white shark. What on earth was he supposedly eating, and how would he have looked if he wasn't eating any other animals? I just can't conceive of that. So the problem with this is, and remember what I said, that we believe now that the universe is young. So this Adam and Eve stuff, garden stuff, is only 6,000 to 10,000 years, something. It's very short. This is a short amount of time ago, and this is where you encounter the real problem now. If we say that all of the animals were designed to were herbivores and they just ate plants, But now we see them, we have all these carnivores eating nothing but meat. Think of the kind of radical evolution that would have had to have occurred in just these few thousand years. So that's the problem, is that I'm scared that if we say that there was no animal death before the fall, that we would actually become the most radical evolutionists of all time. We say, yeah, things went from, a great white shark eating, I don't know, seaweed or whatever it's eating, to eating other whales and stuff. So it's just staggering to think of the kind of evolution that we would have to have in these few thousand years. That seems to me to go far beyond what we want to say is possible with microevolution. So that is a severe problem that I see with that theory. The other thing that I think is a problem in seeing the world this way, if we said that the world was so radically different before the fall, is that all the things that we observe now, the intricate food chain, how each thing is, each animal is eaten by something else, and there's this wonderful design that we see in this. So you see this design in the food chain. You see it, for instance, with the water cycle too. Just how the whole ecosystem, I think the Lord designed it. But if we say that this entire ecosystem now is not the way that God designed it, but this is the result of the fall, and then when God cursed the world and everything now becomes corrupt, and sin and death and suffering comes in, and then as an evolution now accounts for and explains the way that everything exists as it does now. I think that's also a problem that's taking away from God, because I think God is the one who designed things as they are. Now, I'm not saying that everything is the same now as it was then. I'm sure there are huge differences, but I'm saying I think it goes too far to say that there was absolutely no animal death before the fall. Another thought experiment is this. If you say, okay, so we got a little ant walking, all the ants are eternal, they're everywhere, there's gazillions of these things, okay? Now they're walking there, and here comes an elephant, and the elephant steps on the ant. What happens to the ant? Does that ant not die? You got to say either the ant dies or it doesn't die. If it doesn't die, then what? How does that even work? Would God prevent the elephant from stepping on it? Or it's just it seems irrational to think that no animal could die, even if it was stepped on by an elephant. But now, what would happen to that ant? So the elephant steps on it, then the ant now is dead because he's squashed. Does nothing come to eat that ant? Or think of the elephant now steps on a goat, and then the goat is dead. Or what happens to that goat? Do none of the insects come and eat that goat, or does it just lay there into forever and rot? Or what happens? Just thinking about decomposition and how all the decomposers that we have in the food chain as well. Those things would have no purpose, and none of that would exist. So it just seems like that's also another problem, is that what would happen? Are animals not even able to die? Like if that goat fell off the mountain and he tumbled 1,000 feet and landed on a sharp rock, would he also not have died? So it seems silly to think that God's design was that no animals could die. Now, someone could object, we'd say, and we'd have the same problems with humans. If no humans could die, then what would happen to a human if he accidentally fell off the mountain, or if the overpopulation argument? But I think, at least those problems, I want those problems, because the Bible clearly says that there was no human death before the fall. But I think it's going too far to say there was no animal death. So, yeah, what do you think? If you're a young earth creationist, what do you think of that argument? I just don't want us to look like we are the most radical evolutionists of all, because in just a few thousand years, the world would have had to have changed so much that every animal could change its entire composition and its nature.